Um, my name is Melissa Greenstein. I am currently the Vice President of Endorsements for National Women's Political Caucus here in St. Louis. But tonight, what we want to do is sort of bring this statewide. This is not a St. Louis thing, this is a state thing. So I would love to introduce the president of the state caucus, Tiana McGaugh. Hooray.
Hello, everyone. It's good to see everyone tonight. I'm actually also celebrating 314 Day, but I wanted to pop in and say hello to everyone on this call. I am overwhelmed by the support that Helena has got on this event. She has plenty more of them coming. We have one, mark your calendars, March the 28th. We have another one coming up. We're going to Springfield. I had 3 priorities when I took over as president. One was for Kansas City and Missouri, St. Louis to work together. They're working together. And another one was fundraising. We gave our candidates $1,000 each last year. So that was a big deal. We are building power in the state going into 2024. So the conversation tonight, I'm so excited about. Thank you all for being on here. Helena, great job. Melissa, thank you for being Helena's Rock. Denise, it's good to see you on. I see a lot of familiar faces on here tonight. Thank you so much, Melissa, for having me and introducing me.
Thank you, Tiana. We really appreciate you being here. It means the world to all of us. We have a wonderful array of speakers for tonight, starting obviously with Denise Lieberman, and then a variety of different people who are going to talk about a variety of different religions. So I'm really excited to get to talk to everybody. Okay, so at this moment, we are going to invite Denise Lieberman, who's going to be our first panelist tonight. She is the Director and General Counsel of the Missouri Voter Protection Coalition, and she is also the Missouri lawyer for the Americans United for the Separation of Church and State and National Women's Law Center lawsuit against the Missouri abortion bans. So thank you so much, Denise, for joining us. And I'm going to let you tell us a little bit about yourself and all of the things that you are involved in here. Let me find you, and I'm going to spotlight you so everybody can see you. Beautiful. Thank you.
Hi, good evening, everybody. Thank you so much for having me this evening. I'm actually not here tonight in my capacity as the director of the Missouri Voter Protection Coalition, though that is a role that I play. But I also have a long history doing work on constitutional law and women's reproductive health care. So I'm here tonight as the attorney on behalf of Americans United for Separation of Church and State and the National Women's Law Center, representing 14 plaintiffs in a lawsuit we filed in January, challenging Missouri's abortion restrictions as a violation of the separation of church and state. Also a longtime board member of Pro-Choice Missouri for more than 20 years. I served as a clinic escort for more than a decade. And I'm also an adjunct professor of law at Washington University, where I teach the university's first course on gender, sexuality, and the law. I've also been selected, I'm very excited to add, to co-lead a new program at Washington University for the entire calendar year 2024 school year on reproductive justice. And that's going to be very exciting. I'm also, of course, a longtime member of the Women's Political Caucus and served as president of the National Women's Political Caucus for the St. Louis area quite a while ago, from 1999 to 2001. And so it's always wonderful to be back with all of my friends at the National Women's Political Caucus. So let's talk a little bit about this case. I'm so very, very proud to be serving as the attorney on behalf of 14 faith leaders in the state of Missouri. We just added a new one who have brought this case. But of course, and you know, we could spend quite a bit of time, and of course we have over the years, discussing the state of reproductive rights in this country and here in the state of Missouri. And of course, even before Dobbs fell, the state of reproductive healthcare access for women and birthing individuals in the state of Missouri was virtually nil. And that is because a series of laws that our legislature passed over the years, even when Roe was on the books, made access difficult, elusive, expensive, and sometimes near impossible for Missouri's women and birthing parents. But at least there was a right on paper, right? The restrictions that Missouri enacted prior to Dobbs, including a 72-hour waiting period before women could access abortion. That's the longest in the country. A same physician rule, which required that the woman had to meet with the physician, wait 72 hours, and that very same physician had to be the one who performed the procedure. Well, that also made access extremely limited because there was one doctor in the whole state of Missouri who came to Missouri's one abortion clinic. The other clinics in Missouri were forced to close because of regulatory provisions adopted by the Missouri General Assembly that required doctors to have hospital privileges nearby, shuttering the very last remaining abortion clinics in Missouri, except for the one in St. Louis. So women in Missouri had to travel hours in order to even access abortion. Once you added on the same physician rule, the 72-hour waiting period, you're talking significant expense for people to have to stay overnight. The doctor typically came to St. Louis once a week to perform the procedures at the Planned Parenthood clinic, meaning that it would be very difficult to see that same doctor twice within a 3-day period. And of course, all of these had a significant disparate impact on women and birthing parents of color. And that remains the case today. Missouri has some of the worst maternal mortality rates, not only in the entire country, but in the entire world. So the state of reproductive access was barely worth more than the paper it was written on before last year. But all of us know what happened last June 22nd. The United States Supreme Court issued its ruling in the Dobbs decision, overturning 50 years of legal precedent, guaranteeing a fundamental right to access abortion care. In doing so, in overruling Roe v. Wade and overruling Planned Parenthood versus Casey, the Supreme Court sent the question back to the states. It didn't mean that abortion was illegal across the country. What it meant was that each state got to decide for itself. And we know how that works when fundamental rights are involved. And of course, this affected millions of women and birthing parents. An estimated 24 million women of reproductive age live in areas where the closest distance to the nearest abortion clinic is now increased by at least 100 miles. Think about that. And think about then, if you're a low-wage worker, if you lack access to transportation, if you're a shift worker or an essential worker, if you have childcare, elder care responsibilities, you know the vast majority of people who have abortions are already parents. They already have children. And you add the 72-hour delay, the same physician rule on top of that, and you have a system where there is no access anymore. Missouri's last abortion clinic at Planned Parenthood is now shuttered, and women in Missouri have to travel to Illinois or to Kansas or another state. On top of that, Missouri became the very first state. We're number one, the very first state to enact an abortion ban after the Dobbs decision came down. And that was because we were one of about a dozen states that passed what are called trigger laws. And a trigger law banned abortion. It was passed in 2019, back when Roe was still the law of the land. But what it said was, if Roe falls, the Attorney General can move forward and trigger an immediate ban to take effect. And here in Missouri, It was less than 4 hours after the Dobbs decision came down that Missouri's abortion ban went into effect, the very first state in the country. And so now, with no clinic at Planned Parenthood, what folks see are CPCs, crisis pregnancy centers, that are false abortion clinics that provide inaccurate and non-medical information. These are now being funded by significant numbers of state taxpayer dollars. We know that women who are denied access to abortion have worse financial resources, have worse health outcomes, and have worse overall health outcomes overall. In fact, the maternal mortality rate has been growing in Missouri. In this day and age, in 2023, the maternal mortality rate is growing. It is extremely more dangerous to stay pregnant than it is to terminate a pregnancy. Missouri has one of the highest maternal mortality rates in the world, and Black birthing parents' risk is multiple times higher, 3.5 times higher than that of white birthing parents. Oopsie. And our elected officials were quite proud that Missouri was the very first state to enact a full-scale ban on abortion in the wake of the Dobbs ruling. You can see here the states in dark red that had trigger bans that could immediately put these bans into place. On the left on this slide, you see Governor Parsons' tweet the moment that Attorney General and now United States Senator Mike Schmidt put the papers into effect. And so we are now in the Midwest and in the South, and a reproductive health care desert, a place where women cannot access the necessary health care that they need. And that's where this lawsuit comes in. On January 19th, I was proud to file on behalf of Americans United for Separation of Church and State, the National Women's Law Center, and 13 faith leaders from across the state of Missouri of varying faith traditions, a lawsuit challenging Missouri's abortion bans as a violation of the separation of church and state. In essence, arguing that Missouri's abortion laws promote one particularized religious view of when life begins at the exclusion of others, and requires the rest of the state to abide by that in being denied access to necessary health care.
Today, we are challenging Missouri's abortion ban because we know that America needs a national recommitment to church-state separation. Let's start right here with Missouri. You cannot impose your religious beliefs on us or use your religious beliefs to deny us the care that we need.
Abortion is health care. We are united.
Protect the freedom of religion of all people.
Our freedom to live out our faith or profess no faith at all is an inalienable right.
Separate church and state! Separate church and state!
That was the day we filed this lawsuit on January 19th, just days before the 50-year anniversary of the Roe v. Wade court decision. We filed it here downtown at Christ Church in downtown St. Louis. And here we are we walked to the courthouse, the St. Louis Circuit Courthouse, and filed this lawsuit. Now, this lawsuit is being filed against the entire state of Missouri, against Governor Mike Parson, against the Attorney General, against the state agencies that are responsible for promulgating rules and regulations around access to abortion care and abortion clinics. And we also brought this suit against the prosecutors, prosecuting attorneys in each individual county, who are the agents responsible for enforcing Missouri's criminal laws. And so here we are there we are at the church with a number of our community partners who showed up. This lawsuit is being brought by a coalition of groups, including Americans United for the Separation of Church and State, which you can find at au.org, the National Women's Law Center, which you can find at nwlc.org, the law firm of Arnold and Porter, and myself as local counsel. And we brought this case on behalf of now 14 clergy leaders who represent a range of faiths from Judaism, across Christianity, Methodist, Unitarian, Baptist, Universalist, a number of other ones. And so I want you to meet these folks. You probably know some of them already. The Reverend Tracy Blackman, who is actually a national figure in the UCC Church. Rabbi James Bennett, who is at Temple Shiremeth in St. Louis. Rabbi Doug Albert at Congregation Kol Ami in Kansas City. Reverend Cindy Bum in St. Louis. Reverend Jan Barnes in St. Louis. Reverend Molly House Gordon. Reverend Holly McKissick in Kansas City. Maharat Rory Piker Niece. She's an Orthodox ordained faith leader, an Orthodox Jew. The Right Reverend Dion K. Johnson in mid-Missouri. Rabbi Andrea Goldstein. The Reverend Barbara Pfeiffer, who is also, by the way, a state representative in the Missouri General Assembly, but also an ordained minister, who better to understand the wall between separation of church and state. Oops, that is not Reverend, it should be Rabbi Susan Talvey at Central Reformed Congregation. She's my rabbi. The Reverend Krista Taves, and just added the Reverend Daryl Gray with the Missouri Baptist Progressive State Convention. And here are the provisions we're challenging in court. It's not just the trigger ban, which was House Bill 126. That was the law that passed in 2019 that provides for a complete ban on all abortions except in a medical emergency to take effect when Roe v. Wade falls. So that law is in effect now. That law also includes a cascading series of gestational bans, an 8-week, 14-week, 18-week, and 20-week pre-viability ban. And it also includes a ban on abortions for certain reasons. For example, if the fetus has Down syndrome or due to the gender of the fetus. A violation of those provisions. And by the way, there is no exception for rape or incest. There's no exception to protect a woman's health. The only exception is a medical emergency, which has not been used yet, but has been interpreted and believes to be, upon belief of many, will limit it solely to a life-saving necessity. We have been talking with women that have had ectopic pregnancies, for example, and are concerned that they are going to have to continue to carry a dead fetus inside their body at great risk to themselves, because that would not even meet the definition of a medical emergency. On top of that, we have brought suit against the other restrictions, as well as being rooted in the same religious viewpoints. The 72-hour delay, the same physician requirement, and medication abortion restrictions. In addition, we are also uplifting and challenging the very beginning of our state laws that provide that the life of each human being begins at conception. This is in Chapter 1 of Missouri's statutes. It requires that all subsequent Missouri laws rely on this inherently religious theory, not science, of when life begins. And so how did we bring this case, and how is Missouri the first one? It's almost hard to believe that Missouri would be a trailblazer in this area. Those of you who've been fighting this fight for as long as we have. Well, there's two reasons. One, after Dobbs, what Dobbs means is that now state constitutions are the deciders of the law. And it may surprise you to learn that Missouri's constitution has stronger protections for the separation of church and state than the United States Constitution does, than the federal Constitution does. And we have brought this lawsuit under three provisions of Missouri law in the Missouri Constitution, Article 1, Sections 5, 6, and 7. Section 5, prohibiting the establishment of any religion or coercion of participating in religion, that the state cannot control in any way your rights of conscience or establish an official religion. Section 6, that prohibits the state from providing any regulations that are religious in nature or impede religion. And Section 7, that no state money can go to religious purposes. And we argue all of Missouri's abortion restrictions that I just spoke about fail all three of those provisions. That this is an inherently and unambiguously religious law. The beginning of House Bill 126, Missouri's trigger law, the ban, the abortion ban, states that this is the words on the actual statute, that Almighty God is the author of life and that life begins at conception. This is not science. It's certainly not government. It is one narrow religious theory about when life begins that not all religions adhere to. And if that is not convincing, if the language of the law is not convincing enough for you, I'm going to finish by playing this very, very short video. I want you to hear from Missouri's lawmakers themselves. Missouri lawmakers during the debate on House Bill 126 said the following.
Life begins at conception. Psalms 119 says, your hands made me and formed me.
Being from the biblical side of it, I've always believed that life does occur at the point of conception.
As a Catholic, I do believe life begins at conception. That is built into our legislative findings currently in law.
Someone had mentioned yesterday that this is unconstitutional separation of church and state. Well, the fact of the matter is, I know of no greater way of affirming the natural rights of man than to declare that they are a gift from our Creator.
God doesn't give us a choice in this area. He is the creator of life. And I, being made in his image and likeness, don't get to choose to take that away, no matter how that child came to be.
And what makes you valuable is that you equally share the image of our Creator. You are his work of art.
To me, life begins at conception, and my God doesn't give that option.
You have inherent dignity protected by the Constitution and inherent dignity provided by God.
I rise to offer an amendment ending in .18H. It has been distributed. I move for its adoption.
The only question I have is a rhetorical one, and that is how many of our constituents agree with the statement that God is the author of human life? That statement itself is in violation of the separation of church and state. It's an anti-constitutional statement in and of itself, and I ask the body to oppose the amendment.
So this is why we brought this suit. On behalf of these faith leaders right here, they are suing as Missouri taxpayers. Any one of us could have brought this suit because Missouri's Constitution prohibits our tax dollars from being used to fund a religious purpose. But we know that these faith leaders from many different faiths who can offer not only expert opinions about what constitutes a religious viewpoint, but also argue that their faith beliefs in a range of religions do not subscribe to the particularized faith belief that Missouri lawmakers employed in drafting this law, that life begins at conception and that a fetus is to be given all rights of personhood. My faith belief of Judaism does not believe that. It prioritizes the sentient being over that of the fetus, and does not even consider life to have begun until, well, there's a variety of theories, but for many believe until first breath. And so the other faith leaders believe similarly and want to uphold the rights of women, living sentient women whose rights are now less than that of a clump of cells in the state of Missouri. Missouri's ban says we must prioritize that clump of cells over the health of the women, over the mental health of the women, over the ability of the women to have autonomy over their own bodies and their own lives. And so I could not be more proud to be a part of this case and be representing these incredible faith leaders who are speaking out and have been doing so courageously. Missouri is not necessarily a friendly place to speak out like this. The more we do, the more we can win this battle. There are more action steps ahead, but I know we're going to kind of cover some of that in the panel discussion. And so I want to stop there and urge you to get involved in this work. Get involved in the Women's Political Caucus, Pro-Choice Missouri, Planned Parenthood, the slew, literally dozens of other organizations that have come together to support this lawsuit. And let's talk about this issue until women and other birthing parents and the people that love and care about them step up. We are going to have to continue to fight for our rights. Thank you so much for having me here tonight.
Denise, amazing. I wish I could just sit now and talk to you for the next 3 hours, but I'm going to ask you like 3 quick questions, and then we're going to get to the other panelists. And obviously, for those of you listening, if there are questions that you want to ask of Denise, you can put them in the chat to Helena, and we'll get to that hopefully towards the end. My questions, first of all, if the lawsuit is successful, what is to prevent Missouri lawmakers from just doing another ban where they don't quote religion?
Well, they could, and they very well might. But the truth of the matter is, the language about life beginning at conception and prioritizing a fetus with all the rights of personhood is in Chapter 1 of Missouri's statutes. It invades all of our legal interpretations. We are asking this court to strike down all of the laws that I mentioned, and the legislature would have to go back in and justify further restrictions that did not run afoul of our Constitution.
Okay. Thank you. That was helpful. Second of all, the videos that you played, is there any chance that you would be willing to share those in the chat so that people could watch them again and or share them? Or is that?
Sure, absolutely, absolutely. I can share. There's a whole page on our cooperating organizations' websites about this case that includes some of that, and happy to share my slides as well.
Okay, perfect, because I think that people will want to be able to rewatch these things and or share these things, and I think all of that would probably help in the big picture. The other thing I was going to ask you is, you had mentioned the medical emergency, and you said that no one has challenged that yet, but it's interesting because to me, a medical emergency, as you said, would be somebody's life is in danger, and yet the health of the mother or the life of the mother is not yet an exception. How are they even reconciling those two things that they can't even seem to do?
No, I'm saying that there is an exception in this law for medical emergencies,
right.
But that is, we believe that is being interpreted so narrowly that it could only come into play if the woman's life was actually in danger, as opposed to her health being in danger. For example, that it may not be a sufficient level of emergency even to allow someone that had an ectopic pregnancy to have the fetus removed, and even though there is a risk to her health.
Perfect. Thank you. Sorry, my video keeps glitching, so I'm just turning it on and off. Thank you. I wanted to clarify that. I mean, not that that's okay. To me, this all is not okay. But I mean, that one seems like a really, really, really scary piece that we don't even. I feel like this law is very vague on purpose, and hopefully you will be successful. Denise, we cannot thank you enough. Please stay here with us. We will go on to the next thing.
I just want to add real quick that we're trying to get this law struck down, but there are also opportunities to help ensure the protection for women in the future. There has been a proposed ballot measure filed in Missouri that would enshrine constitutional protection for women and birthing parents to access the necessary health care that they need. That's one reason you're seeing so many attacks by lawmakers this year against the initiative petition process. But this shows that Missourians care about this and they're willing to take steps to ensure protections.
Perfect. And I assume, hopefully my thing won't glitch. I assume that things that we can be doing to be helpful would include lobbying organizations and companies. We could be joining Americans United for the separation of church and state and donating there. Writing
and the National Women's Law Center. Those are the two national organizations that brought this case. There is a sign-on. We are doing a lot of community outreach around this lawsuit and this litigation, and organizations can help and support this and sign on and host more events like this one where we talk about it. The truth of the matter is we need to not be scared to talk about abortion. We need to not be scared to talk about women's health care, and we need to not be scared to stand up and say that living, breathing women have a right to be prioritized in Missouri law.
And as my grandmother would say, from your lips to God's ears. Thank you, Denise.